Hello everyone and welcome back to Winter 89 Colors. My name is Melissa and I am here today with, pardon my Kindle stick. All right, so today I am going to start this page in Ivy and the Inky Butterfly. I'm trying to work kind of front to back. Sorry about all the noise, my goodness. Trying to work front to back with this book. So I was looking at this page and I initially thought it was really complicated and difficult, and now that I'm spending some time looking at it, I'm realizing that it's not actually quite so bad. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure that no more noise pops up for us. Okay, sorry. So, but it's got a lot of light sourcing that I want to work with, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to start by planning out some of my light sourcing before I get into my coloring. I often make this mistake where I start coloring somewhere without looking at where my light sourcing is going to be, and then by the time I get to my light sourcing, it's too late or too difficult to add in that light sourcing. So I'm going to start by doing that for you. I'm going to talk you through it as much as I can, and then once we get to the actual coloring, I will probably throw some music on or just make it silent, and you guys can follow along from there. Okay, so all right, so I'm going to start by, I've already looked at the page and I kind of know what I'm doing, but I'm looking at the door here and I'm going to assume, based on the fact that there's lanterns out here, that this initial part of where she's coming into is kind of dark, minus the light sources. So as she's opening the door, we're going to have a beam of light coming through, and that's going to kind of determine how the ground at the very least is lit, and the lanterns are going to determine how the walls are lit. So I'm starting by looking at where the door is, the way it's angled, and I'm using a ruler. I'm going to zoom in for you a little bit. There we go. We're using a ruler to line up with the bottom of the door frame, and a pencil just really lightly. So that shows me the angle on where the lighting is going to be going. Now, obviously there's some light coming in from behind here as well, so it's going to be going this way, but not quite as far of an angle because of the way that the door is forcing the light to shine. So I am going to kind of go a little bit more like, or maybe I should go kind of on the same angle, because it does kind of work out, doesn't it? All right, so we'll draw from here. So those two little pencil lines represent our lighting on the ground. So we want to create a fade from here to there, somewhere before we hit that line, to create a difference in shadowing. Then when it comes to the lanterns, sorry, I don't have a lot of desk room here. It comes to the lanterns, we see that we've got light inside the lantern, but we also want to create light outside the lantern. So that's going to change how the bricks are shaded and how the background is and the leaves are shaded. So I don't have a compass small enough for this. So I'm going to pull out a circle stencil. Not that it's going to help me a lot, but sometimes it can give you a better idea of where you need to be. So my big stencil book here. So I've got this circular stencil thing, so I'm using my biggest. I'm gonna try to place the candle, not the lamp, but the candle flame, as close to the center of the circle as possible. And like, I am barely touching with my pencil, by the way. Like, I am barely touching. I want to be able to erase that line as easily as possible. Now, the light is not going to be contained within this circle. It's just a rough guideline as to where we should start fading the light in or out. And we're going to do the same on the other side. Try to get the candle, and these little notches you see here, they give you a good idea as to where the center is. Just a little bit, just using my pencil to guide. Yeah, I think that's about right. There we go. So I've created these very, very light stencils lines just to give me an idea, so that no matter where I start coloring, I watch out for those lines, and I can then create my light sourcing based on, sorry, knock the camera, based on those guidelines. So I'm not just willy-nilly coloring and then I realize I've forgotten to put in my light source. So now the next problem is I haven't decided what I'm going to use to actually color this page. Oh, that's always the difficult choice, isn't it? I might, for the sake of comfort, convenience, I might start with Prismacolors and kind of go from there, because Prismacolors are a comfort to me. They were my first professional set of pencils, so I know them fairly well. You know, they're one of the more well-known materials, so I might start there. Normally, lately, I've been trying to do a lot of my backlighting and things like that with soft pastel, because I find that that tends to give us a really good back start. But in the I might do that for the light sources. That's what we're gonna do. Okay, I need my favorite light source color, which is PanPastel Yellow Oxide Tint 270.8. It's a nice, natural, not too bright color. And so that's what I'm going to do to create my first bit of light sourcing. Now, the nice thing about soft pastel is if you're not happy with the way it's going, or a place that it's been placed, you can just erase it. So let's start with, so I'm using just a cotton pad, starting at the centermost point of my light sourcing. And that gives just a nice glow. We can erase any part that we don't want, like if we want the candle a color that's going to clash with that yellow, we can erase the candle part, whatever we need to do. Same on this side. So now that I've got an idea, I don't really need my pencil mark anymore, so I'm going to erase it. I'm going to put a little bit more yellow on this one. There we go. Now I'm going a little over where I wanted to go so that we can create that blend as time goes. There. I'm going to do the same thing down here. So I can see where my line is, so I'm erasing it. I can still just lightly see it. Probably you can't see it on camera, but I can see it in real life. So same on the other side. Making sure the color is least saturated where your line was before you erased it. So starting at the center and working your way out. There. I'm going to zoom out for you so you can see. Now I've got my light sources worked out, and they create guidelines for me so that I know where to pay attention and not go so heavy with my pencil work. So that's a good start for me. I'm happy with that. I'm happy I was smart enough to think through this before I got too crazy and started missing my light sources. That's a big problem for me. It's one of the reasons I don't throw light sources in a lot of the time, is because I forget. I just straight up forget to think about my light sources before I go there. So this is going to be nice. It's not going to be quite nighttime, I wouldn't say, but it's going to be dark in the deep of the jungle, if you know what I mean, right? So that's kind of the plan that I'm going for with this page. So I'm probably going to throw in a lot of metallics. I'm probably going to throw in some other pencils, you know, whatever we feel like, that's what we're going to go for. So yeah, I guess I'll get started and we'll see how it goes. Alrighty, so I'm going to go in with my electric eraser here, and just kind of remove the light sourcing from where it's not particularly necessary. I may have to put it back in later in certain areas, but for right now I just kind of want to get it out of my way so I can see the areas I want to focus on and not have the distraction of the pastel sort of being in my way. These electric erasers, if you've never tried one, are really, really handy. They save you a lot of legwork and they're surprisingly accurate. They really help to create that pinpoint. If you're trying to erase from a small area, you can get the inserts for them, the actual little erasers in different sizes, so that's pretty cool. And they're not that expensive, actually. I was surprised. I thought they'd be more expensive than that, so. Alrighty, so I'm starting off here with my yellow ochre, and I'm going to be doing Ivy's dress. So I decided I'm going to do her dress yellow. I think that's a nice neutral color. It's still fairly bright, creates that happy tone. And it's going to stand out a little bit, but not too much in each of the concurrent pictures that are going to be happening afterwards. So as you know, if you have this book, the Ivy and the Inky Butterfly, there is a picture of Ivy earlier in the book. However, I decided that I didn't like the way it turned out when I first did it, so I ended up gessoing the entire page, so I'm going to have to go back at some point and completely redo the page. So that's going to be a bit of a project, but hopefully I'll be able to get to it, and hopefully I'll be able to make it look all right. So when I go back, I'll probably do a similar color scheme to this for her, but for now, let's focus on starting now and going forward. So I'm just creating a little bit of shadow here, trying to again think about where all the light sources are. It's really tough on this picture because there's so many different possible light sources coming at you from all different angles. So because she's behind the door and because she's, you know, further back a little bit, I'm just sort of focusing on the light sources that would be in the room with her, as opposed to trying to focus on all the light sources that are outside the door. Alright, so I'm coming in with a lighter shade here that's PC 940 and just trying to create that layering effect to soften up that deeper yellow that I just put in. So as we move forward, I decided as I was going that the rest of the stuff in the Wonder Room is going to be more uniform. She's going to be the only yellow, the dress is going to be the only yellow, everything else is all going to be in similar tones, in browns and greens and things like that, despite the fact that earlier, the page that I did previous to this, the actual Wonder Room, was not anywhere near uniform. I had decided that I didn't want it to be because I thought it being a kind of a junk room, a collector's room, that somebody like that isn't gonna have a bunch of uniform stuff, right? It's all going to be different antiques from different eras, and they're all going to be different colors, and so I wasn't too worried about creating a uniform color scheme because in real life that room wouldn't have a color scheme, so I didn't want to make it too realistic, and I wanted to make it more realistic in that sense. So, but for the sake of ease and uniformity and not creating too overpowering of a multicolor scheme on this page, I decided to change it and make it a more uniform scheme. So I'm in with my deco yellow now, creating that a little pop of brightness. Although it's still a very pale yellow, it does have a little bit more that bright yellow to it versus the last two colors I was using, which were much more natural, softer, that kind of thing. So I'm having a bit of trouble getting my camera to focus here. Hopefully you can still see what's going on, but yeah. So I think next we are going to be coming in with either cream or, yeah, cream, 914, and just smoothing everything out, finishing it off, and moving on from there. So the next challenge that I have is I have to figure out her skin. Luckily, because it's a very small picture, it's not going to take too much to get going. I don't have a ton of shading work to do because there's not too much detail, given that it's a very small area. Not to mention Johanna's drawing is very simplistic to begin with, so I'm not too worried about realism. It's very cartoonish, so I'm not gonna stress myself out over trying to create the perfect contours and shades and what have you, so that makes it a little bit easier. And then the next I do her hair. I find hair not that difficult. I've practiced a couple of times in Hannah Lynn's pictures, and that helped me to get an idea. It really is just a matter of creating a shine in the hair somewhere so that it, you know, looks like light is reflecting off of it and creates a few different shades within it. And again, in this simplistic drawing, I'm not going to worry too much about the realism of it because it's just not worth it. Alrighty, so we're coming in here, starting with our peach. I'm starting with a little bit of blush to her cheeks. Sorry about the fuzzy camera here, but starting with a little blush to her cheeks, which will go underneath everything to soften it up. I don't even really have space to put in any highlights or anything like that, so it's just going to be the tiniest bit of shadowing and then plus that bright color on her cheeks. I'm using Deco Peach here to create my shadows. Again, I'm not making them too dark. I'm not too worried about super high-end accuracy at this point. I have a feeling Johanna really struggled to make those hands. You can tell that they're probably not her forte. I mean, her forte is definitely florals and botanicals, things like that. So drawing a person was clearly not her strongest suit, and that's okay. I mean, we all have our thing, right? I applaud her for even making an attempt at it. So, I mean, I couldn't do any better, that's for sure. Ivy's eyes are a little creepy in this instance, though. I don't know if anybody else has noticed that or feels that way, but they creep me out just a little bit. They're so wide and, you know, they almost have this alien-esque effect to them, which is really funny, but I try to fix that up a little bit later. Alright, so we're going to be moving on to her hair here. So we're going to start out with chocolate. All these little in-behind pieces behind her neck, there would be no light hitting them really, so I make them much darker using the darkest color I'm going to be using for her hair. But as we get closer, further and further out away from her body, you would see more reflections from the light. So I try to create that highlight space somewhere along the strand. And notice I try to leave a little bit of a highlight space near the very tip of the hair as well. Closer to the root, I usually leave it fairly dark as well. You'll notice that most people's hair is darker as it leaves their scalp. And that's because the sun hasn't hit it yet, so there's been no sun bleaching effect. it's got its full melanin count and nothing's been stripped away from it. The way that Johanna's drawn the hair here makes it pretty easy to create those basic highlights. And again, because we're not zoomed in close to her, she's pretty far away, you don't have to be super, super accurate with things. As long as you get that little bit of highlight, it'll give the effect of shiny, healthy hair. I imagine that that's a way you could make stringy, straw-like dead hair too, is by removing that that highlight. I'll have to experiment with that sometime. If probably around Halloween time will be good if there's any, you know, witch-like figures or anything like that. I could experiment to see how we could make the hair look a little bit less alive. That would be very interesting. Alrighty, it's coming along now, so just at the very end of doing the hair here, we'll just have to link the highlights a little bit, smooth out where we've created those transitions. Yeah, cream is a good bet. I use cream so very much. If I'm using Faber-Castell, then I'm using the ivory so very much. I find that using white can often be just a little too stark, a little too dampening, whereas the cream looks a lot more natural in most cases, cream or ivory, depending on what pencils you're using. Whenever a pencil set doesn't come with like an off-white, I get very uncomfortable. Like I don't know what to do with myself when it comes to doing things like highlights and blending and things like that. Very rarely do I need to actually use a stark white. I find that an off-white is a little bit easier. All right, so from here I'm moving into starting to do the background a little bit. I've moved on from working on Ivy. I think mostly at the time I think I was just stalling because I wasn't sure what I was going to do with her eyes and those leaves, so I wanted to kind of get into the background to see what I could use that would stand out but not clash. So in the previous pages I had made the walls of the Wonder Room a beige or light yellow ochre type of color. So I stuck with that, but also because it makes a very soft and neutral background that I wouldn't be interfering or clashing with anything. So that's kind of the direction I went with it here. Here's me getting annoyed with my camera. Trying to find a way to keep it from getting so blurry all the time on you. Oh, I need a new setup, let me tell you guys. Filming can be a little bit difficult with the setup that I have. I don't really have accurate lighting. I'm using my phone. I wish I had a stand that would stand separate from the desk so that I wouldn't shake the camera so much, that kind of thing. So, but eventually, those are things for down the line, figuring out what to do with myself and how to improve my my status and everything else. So I just want the quality of content to be decent for all you folks out there. All right, I'm gonna leave you guys for a little while to get by on your own. I'm not gonna bother putting in background music. I'll just leave it silent. If you want to put on your own music in the background, that's totally fine and up to you. But we'll see you at the end of this video. Alrighty, folks. Well, that about brings us to the end of this part of this project. So if you go to my channel, you'll notice that I did a live a little bit before posting this video. If you go to the links that tell you where my lives are, there's a recording of a live where I did the next part of this page. We do the stonework and start working on how the lighting is going to work around those lamps. So if you want to have a look at that, go ahead and go back to my channel and find that. I'll try to link it in the description below if I remember. But otherwise, just make sure that you're liking and commenting, subscribing, and letting me know what you thought of this and what you'd like to see next on the channel. I appreciate you being here, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your coloring day.